I heard the crash before I heard my dad scream, and by the time I ran to the stairs, Karen was already blaming him. Karen moved in next door about a year ago. At first, she seemed like one of those overly curious neighbors. You know the type. Always peeking through the blinds, always finding an excuse to walk by just as you're unloading groceries or mowing the lawn. My dad said she gave him a weird feeling from day one, but I brushed it off. She was just a lonely, middle-aged woman with nothing better to do. Or so we thought. My dad, Mark, wasn't the kind of guy to cause trouble. He was calm, respectful, and honestly, just trying to enjoy a quiet retirement. After working as a firefighter for over 30 years, he earned that peace. His knees ached when it rained, and he had a limp that came and went, but he never complained. He spent his days fixing up the garden, listening to old records, and, his favorite, building little birdhouses out back. Karen didn't like that. The noise, she would say. That hammering and drilling is disturbing the peace. It was a cordless drill. My mom had passed 2 years prior, and since then, it had just been me and Dad. I stayed with him after college to help around the house and keep him company. I guess we were each other's lifelines. That made what happened even harder. The tension with Karen started slow. Passive-aggressive comments. Complaints about imaginary violations. One time she claimed our recycling bin was 2 inches over the property line. 2 inches. My dad laughed it off at first. She's just bitter, he'd say. Some folks need drama to feel alive. But Karen wasn't just bitter. She was venomous. And we didn't realize how deep it went until it was too late. It was a Sunday evening. I had gone out to pick up dinner, and when I came back, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I called out, "Dad?" but got no answer. That's when I heard the dull thud, followed by a horrible, strangled cry. It came from the stairs. I dropped everything and ran. My breath caught in my throat when I saw him. My dad, crumpled at the bottom of the staircase, his legs twisted, at an angle that just wasn't right. His hands were shaking, eyes wide with pain, and standing halfway up the stairs was Karen. I told him not to come near me, she snapped, arms folded tightly. He lunged at me. What was I supposed to do? What? I screamed. What did you do to him? She didn't flinch, just stared at me like I was the one being unreasonable. He shouldn't have followed me up here. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I just dropped to my knees next to him. His lips were trembling, and when he tried to speak, no sound came out. The pain had completely overtaken him. "I'm calling 911, I choked. Karen scoffed, turned, and walked down the stairs, carefully stepping around my father like he was trash on the floor, and left through the front door. She just walked away. The paramedics arrived quickly. They had to stabilize his neck, and I heard one of them mutter something about possible spinal trauma. I remember sitting in the hospital hallway, covered in dried blood and dirt, staring at the floor. My fingers were still shaking when the doctor came out with the results. Pelvic fracture, broken femur, dislocated hip, 2 cracked ribs, and worst of all, nerve damage to his lower back. He wouldn't be walking for months, maybe longer, maybe never without help. I nodded, like I understood. But I didn't. I didn't understand anything. Not how someone could do this to a man like my dad. Not how Karen, just the neighbor, could look him in the eye and then leave him there like that. The police came to the hospital later that night. They asked questions. I told them everything. I was sure there'd be an arrest. But when the officer asked, "Do you have any witnesses who saw her push him?" I felt my stomach drop. No, I didn't. There were no cameras. No one else in the house. Just her word and mine. And my dad, too broken to speak. "She's saying he startled her and fell trying to grab the railing," the officer said carefully. "Unless we can prove intent or find evidence that contradicts her story." I didn't hear the rest. My head was buzzing. My hands clenched so hard I thought I'd break my own fingers. I sat by my dad's bedside that night and watched him sleep through the haze of pain meds. His face was pale and slack. I thought about all the mornings he made me pancakes when I was little, the nights he waited up with soup when I was sick. The man who used to carry me on his shoulders now couldn't feel his own feet. And Karen, gotta go home. She was just the neighbor, just the woman next door. But something inside her was evil. She saw the gentlest man I knew as someone she could shove down the stairs and walk away from. And the worst part? The system wasn't going to stop her. I couldn't sleep that night. Even though the hospital chair was stiff and cold, and my body was screaming for rest, my mind kept replaying it, over and over again. The look on Karen's face when she walked away, the blankness in her eyes, the way she stepped around my dad's body like he was an inconvenience on her way out, and his face, his eyes, I'd never seen fear like that in them before. The nurses came in and out, adjusting monitors and IVs. My dad stayed mostly unconscious, occasionally groaning when they repositioned him. I kept holding his hand, whispering, "I'm here, Dad. I'm here," like saying it enough times would make this nightmare go away. But morning came, and the nightmare was still real. When he finally woke up, really woke up, his eyes fluttered open and locked onto mine. It took him a moment to focus, but then he whispered, "What happened?" I hesitated. You fell down the stairs." He winced and turned his head slightly. "Karen." That one word made my heart skip. "Yeah, Dad. What happened up there?" He closed his eyes and let out a shaky breath. "She was yelling, again. About the birdhouses this time. Said they were attracting rats. I told her to leave. She didn't like that. She came up onto the porch. I told her again to leave. She pushed past me. She was trying to go into the house." "What?" I said, barely able to breathe. "Why?" "I don't know. I blocked her. I stood between her and the door. And then—" His voice broke. "Then she shoved me. Hard. I lost my balance. That's all I remember." I swallowed hard, trying to steady the fury boiling in my chest. "She told the cops you tripped. That you were aggressive with her." He didn't even look surprised. "Of course she did." I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. My dad was barely hanging on, his body broken, and Karen was back in her house like nothing happened. She had even called in a noise complaint that morning, as if she hadn't shattered our lives the night before. I went home to shower and change, and as I stood in the driveway, I saw her, Karen, leaning casually against her car, sipping a smoothie like she didn't have a care in the world. Our eyes met. She smiled. She smiled. "You should really keep your father in check," she called. "Out. It's dangerous when old men forget their limits." I saw red. I stormed across the lawn, fists clenched, but something stopped me. My dad's voice in my head, soft but firm. "Don't let her drag you down with her." So I stopped. I turned. I walked back to the house, but I was shaking so badly. I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock the front door. The following days were a blur of hospital visits, physical therapy evaluations, and medical bills that felt like punches to the gut. They said the recovery process would be long. Months of rehab. Surgery might be needed. He might never regain full use of his legs. And the police. They said there was no sufficient evidence to pursue criminal charges. No witness, no video, no proof of intent, the officer had told me over the phone. It's her word against his. "But he's the one in a hospital bed," I said bitterly. "She walked away without a scratch. I'm sorry. We're limited by the law. Sorry." That word didn't mean anything anymore. I sat next to Dad in the hospital, scrolling through community forums, hoping, praying someone else had seen or experienced something. Maybe a neighbor had a security camera that caught something. Maybe Karen had a history. Turns out, she did. I found an old thread on a local forum. A neighbor 3 streets over said Karen had once accused her son of lurking outside her house when he was walking their dog. Another said Karen had called CPS on a single mom for negligence when her kid was playing barefoot in the backyard. Karen wasn't just a bad neighbor. She was a predator, a manipulative one. And no one had ever stopped her. That night, as I was sitting with Dad, he turned to me and whispered, "Don't let her break you too." I looked at him, his eyes sunken from pain, tubes running from his arms, and I almost broke right there. "I won't," I said. "But she's not getting away with it." He smiled faintly. "That's my kid." I started documenting everything. I collected every message, every voicemail, every police report. I filed formal complaints. I talked to lawyers. One attorney told me, "This will be a long fight, and there's no guarantee you'll win." "I don't care," I told him. "She hurt my dad." But even while I was gathering evidence, the damage had already been done. Our lives had changed forever. We had to install a ramp. My dad couldn't bathe without help. He couldn't go outside without a wheelchair. His garden went wild with weeds. The birdhouses started to rot. One day I caught him staring out the window at the porch, tears silently running down his cheeks. "I used to walk out there every morning," he said quietly. "Now I just watch the sun rise from here." That crushed me more than anything Karen ever said or did. She took more than his mobility. She took his freedom, and she didn't even blink. There's this silence that takes over a house after trauma. It isn't just the absence of sound. It's the presence of something heavier. Like grief itself is living in the walls. Every creak of the floorboard, every faucet drip, every rustling leaf outside. It all felt louder because it had to fill the emptiness where my dad's footsteps used to be. We used to laugh in this house. We used to argue over what music to play while cooking or who left the light on in the garage. Now, all of that seemed like a lifetime ago. Our lives had shrunk down to physical therapy appointments, medication schedules, and the quiet whir of the stair lift we had to install. Dad hated it. Not just the lift, but everything. The loss of independence, the pain, the embarrassment of needing help to use the bathroom or get dressed, and worst of all, the feeling that the woman who did this to him was just fine. Karen didn't apologize. She didn't come forward. She never once admitted fault. In fact, I'd see her some days trimming her hedges, waving at joggers like she hadn't destroyed someone's life. It made my stomach twist. But Dad, he was trying so hard not to let the bitterness consume him. One day, about 2 months into recovery, I found him in his wheelchair by the porch window, trying to hold a screwdriver in his weakened grip. "What are you doing?" I asked gently. "Trying to fix that stupid wind chime," he muttered. "It keeps spinning the wrong way." I took the tool from his hand. "Dad, you don't have to push yourself. You need to rest." He looked at me. Really looked at me. His voice cracked when he said, "I don't want to feel useless." That's when I realized this wasn't just about physical recovery. It was emotional, spiritual, a war inside him every day just to feel like a man again, after one shove took everything away. I held his hand. "You're not useless. You're still my dad. You're still the strongest person I know." He smiled at that, but it was the kind of smile that tries to hide pain. And I hated Karen even more for turning this unshakable man into someone who had to fight to believe in himself again. Eventually, we did try to press civil charges. A lawyer agreed to take the case pro bono. Not for money. We didn't have that. But, to make a point, we argued negligence, emotional distress, assault. But Karen had her own lawyer, and they were good at twisting the story. She feared for her safety, they claimed. He startled her. She panicked. They painted my dad, a retired firefighter who once ran into burning buildings to save strangers, as some kind of unstable old man who lunged at a woman half his size. It was infuriating, disgusting. But in the end, it wasn't enough. We didn't win. The judge said the burden of proof wasn't met. No criminal charges. No civil liability. Just a note in the court record and a hollow legal shrug. She got away with it. I whispered to myself that night, sitting in the dark living room while Dad slept down the hall. But something in me said, not forever. Because Karen may have escaped the courtroom. But she couldn't escape who she really was, and people eventually see the truth. It started small. One neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, stopped talking to her. Then another refused to return her tools. Then someone put up a sign in their yard that read, "In this neighborhood, we protect our own." I hadn't told anyone to do it. I think people just started seeing her differently. Word had gotten around. Whispers turned into certainty. She'd become a ghost in her own street. No smiles returned. No party invites. Her garden started to rot. Her house, once pristine, now looked tired. Just like the person inside it. Justice didn't come in a courtroom, but it came slowly, steadily. And honestly, it was almost more satisfying to watch her world crumble under the weight of who she really was. Meanwhile, my dad, he kept fighting, every day, a little more strength. Every session, a little more balance. We celebrated small victories, standing, up for 10 seconds, climbing 2 steps, holding a coffee mug without dropping it. And then one morning, 6 months later, I walked into the kitchen and found him. Standing. No cane. No walker. Just standing, hands braced on the counter, sweat on his forehead, tears in his eyes. "I wanted to surprise you," he said, breathless. "I made it in here on my own." I didn't even realize I was crying until he reached out and wiped my cheek with a trembling hand. "You're amazing," I whispered. He nodded. She didn't win. That moment, that was our justice. Not a courtroom verdict, but resilience. Not revenge, but recovery. Not destruction, but dignity. Karen may have taken his body down the stairs, but she didn't take his spirit. She didn't take our bond. And she sure as hell didn't take our peace. We built a new birdhouse together that spring. Hung it from a low branch in the front yard where everyone could see. Karen saw it too. She stood across the street, frozen in her driveway, watching us laugh and hammer and build. My dad looked right at her and waved. Not out of forgiveness, but victory. She turned away and went back inside. We never spoke again. But we didn't need to.